Yes, hello, I'm here.
Hey, Amanda.
Sorry, I was taking pictures of my double chin. Sorry, I still haven't sent the email. I will. I very much will.
What email?
The Linux.
Oh,
Through
yeah.
Linux.
Right, right. Where's Zoom go? Oh, this is Windows. Oh, sorry. Hey, Christopher. Amanda's on. And what is here?
So yeah, I'm trying to get into Cengage or MindTap and it's not loading. So, like, I've been trying for the past 15 minutes.
Sorry.
But I'm sure we won't be looking at that today, right? Yeah, we never do. What am I talking about?
Well, as long as you don't know either.
Yay.
All right. No, almost there. I love how the Chrome icon in Linux is square. I should be ready in just a second.
So what are we going over today? Are we still doing 4 or are we on 5?
If you wait just a moment, we will tell you.
I cannot wait.
You cannot, well, learning patience is just one of those things.
You're right.
I'll tell you in a second. So.
Okay.
There. Hopefully we can all see my screen now. Yeah. Anybody else? No, I think we're just the 3 of us, 4 of us. So there's 2 things I wanted to talk about today. One was, well, of course, everybody should keep working on their homework. But I also I put 2 homework assignments on my EMCC, which they shouldn't be too challenging. I found a website that has a really nice walk you through writing a program. And we're going to look at that today as we go so that we can, and it's much easier to follow, I think, than anything that's in Cengage. So let's take a look at that. And your output for that would be an HTML file, which you could then, we haven't talked yet about using your Linux machines as a service provider or a server, but you can, and that way you can you can make HTML pages, which are then available to be shared out to the rest of the world. Last class, we talked about permissions, and you have user, group, and other. Noah's stuck in the Microsoft world. So, one of the things that you'll be able to do is make an HTML page. We're not going to serve it out as a worldwide web page, but you'll be this close to being able to do it, just a hop, skip, and a jump away. So there's 2 homework assignments. The one I'm explaining at the moment, that was winter break homework 2. I'm just going to go into the edit because that's how I can see it. And if we go down and look at the directions, it's fairly straightforward. You're going to go to a website, and there are 7 pages, that you go page after page after page. Very nicely done. Read it. Very easy reading. I'm not saying you won't get stuck on anything, but they give you all of the text and they modify it step by step. And we're going to do some of that in class today. At each step, you have a working program, and then the next step takes it a little farther. It introduces putting variables in there. It introduces basically what you're going to do is write a shell program that you'll turn into an executable, which will then write it to a HTML file, which you can then leave right there on your desktop, put it someplace, move out of the terminal, and then open it with your browser, and it should give you the same information. So this is the beginning of, if any of you have ever accessed a router, a switch, a server, through a web interface, this is how that does that, or it's one way that it does that. I'm just going to go close the door. Where I sit, I get it funneled right down through lands on my desk.
Holy moly. I missed a homework. Crap. The February 7th one.
I'm pretty sure that's the email.
Yeah, that's the one where you're trying to send me an email, I think.
Yeah, I failed like 3 times, but I'll try again.
Okay, so we're going to come back to this in a minute, but I just happened to start talking about that one. The other one, let me go back out of here. Next assignment. So this one, winter break. In this one, this should be fairly straightforward. It is set up as a test. It's not a test, but it basically has, four sections, and you have to fill in the 4 sections. You need to go find a Linux article. And that means you go to the browser, you type in Linux in the news, latest things about Linux, changes in Linux, find something. You could be a little more specific and say news about Ubuntu, news about Debian, news about Fedora. I mean, I don't care about that, but what I don't want is I don't want blogs, because blogs are really hard to call it an article. There are so many articles out there about Linux. I happen to look back. If you've never done a time, hold on a second. What am I always supposed to do at the beginning of the class?
Record.
I'm supposed to record.
Oh, shoot.
Oh, hey, it is. I don't know why, but it's recording.
Is it recording from the last class?
No, because it stopped and made that one, but maybe it remembers that the last time I had it open. I don't know. I can't explain them. Says it's recording. We're hoping it's recording. So if I go in and I open, up a new tab in Google, and I type in news about Linux. Now, you got lots and lots of things that you can look at. A couple of search tools if you've never used them. So right up underneath the search bar, there's a thing called Tools. I'm going to click that, and you'll notice what popped up is Anytime and All Results. I'm going to go to Anytime, and so I can say, just show me the past hour, the past day, the week, the month, the past year. Or I can go to Custom Range. I'm going to go to Custom Range and say, I only want to see things a year ago, so I can see what kind of news there was a year ago. So you see, I just said Custom Range 1/1/2018 to 1/31, and then I hit go. So what I'm seeing is only stuff that was in the news a year ago. Just trying to see, top 10 distros a year ago. This week in open source news. What version of Linux does Google use for the desktops? So the instructions, I believe, say to go and look at the past 6 months. And you don't all want to pick yesterday, because then we're going to get all of you doing the same article. There are a few websites that probably serve up the most. Elixir is the Linux news. Linux Insider is another one. Linux Journal is another one. Linux Today is another one. You have to remember that, again, Linux is two things. One, it's an open source, so there's thousands and tens of thousands of people who program what it is that Linux is. So they all, they write articles, and then there are different journals that support different flavors, and just like you've got more than one sports magazine, you've got more than one Linux news. Because it's almost entirely online, that works. But I could also go in up here, Linux in the news, New York Times. And so here's the New York Times from 2018, last month, taking a look at Linux, or Linux operating system, Red Hat Inc., IBM to buy Red Hat. So there's all sorts of news. Now, you'll notice by the time you get down to Microsoft opens its corporate data software to Linux, you're already down to 2016, so you might want to avoid that. So my guess is that New York Times runs some articles, but it's not like a daily thing. Noah, did you have a question?
Yeah, IBM to buy Red Hat. What would drive a company to do that? Is that just because maybe that distro fit like what they required in an OS, and
I would read the article.
I know. You could just do that. Do you want it?
Well, somebody can pick as a class.
No.
Well, so the things you'll need for your homework are the title of the article. In this case, it would be IBM to buy Red Hat, the top Linux distributor for $34 billion. Remember, Red Hat is a commercial offering of a Linux operating system, which is unusual because most of them are free. Yeah. And the second thing you'll need would be the URL up at the top so that we can go find it. You'd want the date that it came out. This was October of 2018, so it's within that 6 months. And then you have to read the article so that you can write me a 2-paragraph to 2-page article. No longer than 2 pages, no shorter than 2 paragraphs. Please don't write a paragraph that says, It was an article about IBM buying Linux,
Yeah.
Red Hat. I mean, is it a paragraph? Technically, but it gives me no useful information other than reiterating the title. So, you know, if we just look at the first couple of paragraphs, you're probably going to find that IBM is making a big move to bring more software developers under its wing by acquiring Red Hat. So maybe what they're doing it for is to buy the developers.
Yeah.
They don't need Red Hat as much maybe as they need 10,000 programmers, you know, or whatever it happens to be. They go on to say they acquired GitHub in June. Again, a major code sharing platform. And with the deal, Red Hat, IBM is trying to position itself as a kind of corporate Switzerland and cloud computing. You know, you might have to, once you know this, then you can also go back up to the top. Now, this was a New York Times article.
Yeah.
It's not a technical journal. So you could go back up and search IBM buys Red Hat and see who else wrote about it. So Red Hat, the future of Red Hat at Network World, CNBC, TechCrunch, ZDNet. You know, so there's a lot of places that you could go for additional information. The whole goal is if we've got 15 people in the class, I can't make all of you pick different articles, but chances are if you spread it out over 4 months, pick different distros, that one's Red Hat, somebody else is going to find something cool about Fedora, somebody else is going to find something cool about Ubuntu. When we're done, we should have a fairly good smattering of different things. You will see Linux articles in the Bangor Daily News once in a while. I saw one a couple of weeks ago online. It's been a long time since I got the Bangor paper in paper, but and if you got it off of a paper, magazine, whatever, then you need to make sure you spell out what the publication was, what date it was, and what page it was on. If you got it online, then I need the URL and the title of the article and the date that it had published. Every once in a while, you will find no date associated with a file. And I mean, most articles have a date associated with it. And there's a difference between a date and certainly blogs all have dates. But if you come across, let's say IBM posted it on their website, it may be an undated news announcement. And sometimes companies will do that because then they don't have to worry about it becoming old news. So if it's 2 weeks before they add something else, it's like, well, nobody's added anything here for a few weeks, then it's less distinct. So those are your 2 homework assignments. One is to just find an article, read it. You know, that one, if you didn't find any technical news in that, how about if we typed in why did IBM buy Red Hat? You know, and so there's ZDNet's got some article about it. You might find just more, you know, was it to acquire the technology? Was it to acquire the company because they needed the people in the company? Was it to close a company out to take away competition? Was it to expand their horizons so that they have a wider variety of offerings? I mean, they're not likely to pay $34 billion for freeware unless they plan to take it into the payware side of things, if that makes any sense. All right. So that was that. Those are your 2 assignments. And if you're behind, again, you should be working to get your way up through Module 5 in the class, and then we'll get right back to that when we get back. However, if you read in there, the article, the news article that you're supposed to be reviewing, you should be able to tell us about it, at least verbally, when we get back. So don't pick something you don't understand or can't come to an understanding about, because it would, it's going to make it awkward for you when we come back. So look around for an article that you get that makes sense to you, or that through research you could find out what it is that they're talking about. Does that make sense, Noah?
Yeah.
Yeah, and Amanda and Christopher.
Yes, thank you.
A lot of the Forbes has a crazy amount of Linux.
Yes.
I'm seeing so much on Forbes about different Linux things.
Because it impacts everything. We hear about Microsoft, we hear about Apple. They're in the news all the time, but you have to keep coming back to the fact that more computer devices operate on Linux than any other platform in the world. But, although they do have advertising now. Red Hat will have advertising, but that's because it's a commercial platform. And nobody's going to go out, Linux Mint is not going to go out and spend $5 million for a 30-second ad on the Super Bowl so that you'll go out and not buy their stuff, because there is no cost to buy it. So they don't have a budget to do that. They're happy making the best product that they can through donated time by tens of thousands of people around the world. That's the concept behind open source software. On the other hand, if you make a paid-for platform like Red Hat, then there is a budget to market it, because the more people that use your software, the greater your revenues are. And eventually IBM will buy it for $34 billion. I should have written Red Hat. Okay, so let's go to the, let me just go find the website here.
Unrelated, module 1 and 2 were graded, but I think it's because I started a new attempt accidentally. It says on the little graph thingy that I got a 0. But when I hover over, it says like the percentage.
Which
says
one?
Module 1 and 2 for me.
All right, I'll take a look.
Okay, because it says 0, but when I hover, it's like, yeah, it's like you graded it, and I did bueno.
Okay, it may just have, if I pop it open, it might just say accept it, and take it from there. So we're on the linuxcommand.org website. They've got a lot of useful tutorials. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through some of this and write some scripts. We started doing that in the homeworks, and we're going to do most of it inside of a text editor. We aren't going to use VI. So I'm just going to minimize this. I'm going to go over here to the text editor. We've got that open. Now I'm going to open this back up, but I'm going to stick it over here. If I do this. There we go.
Real quick before you move on, I was wondering, with the first homework assignment for break, does that matter how long we talk about it? Or are we just finding key points of the article?
You need to try in somewhere between 2 paragraphs and 2 pages to tell me what the article's about, why it's important, what impact it might have. I don't know, you've got it. Somebody wrote an article like that one where the whole topic was IBM buys Red Hat. That's just one. That was one we popped up with. But there's hundreds of articles to pick from. It could be NASA uses Linux on the space rover. Space Force decides it wants Linux operating systems on all of its hardware. Who knows? The next Google car will be operating on a Linux operating system. I don't care what the article is, but read the entire article. And probably it should be an article that's longer than 2 paragraphs, because you'll have a really hard time writing 2 paragraphs about a 2-paragraph article. But there's so many articles to pick from. Find one that's got enough information and go with it. And as you go through it, pull out some of the key details, and then, like any little short essay you've ever had to do, tell the story about what it is you learned. Does that make some sense, Devin?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to know how long I needed to write about it.
Yeah, it says right in, if you read the directions, it says must be at least 2 paragraphs, not more than 2 pages. Noah here said he wanted a 5-page one, but I said no. Sorry, I'm just picking on you, Noah. So we've got the text editor open, and we're just going to go in here. We're going to copy their very first one. Oops. Oh, that's right. Go over here, paste it. Now, what do the first 2 lines in this do? Anybody know?
Just returns a comment, right?
Right. If you let me see if I can zoom in a little bit. I don't know if I have a zoom feature. Oh, there it is. Nope. Oh, there we go. Find your text. Okay, so if you put these little hashtags at the beginning of a line, it means absolutely nothing. So I can do, this is how we put comments into a file. And it will totally ignore everything that comes after it. This is what they call documentation inside of a file. And if you write program, you need to put documentation into your code. The only line of this entire program that means anything is the one that says echo hello world. So we're going to save this. We're going to save it as, I'm just going to put it in my Pickford. I'm going to call it hello world.sh for a shell command. Now we pop over to the terminal world. There's that hello world.sh. But what do we have to do to turn it into a executable file? Anybody remember?
Oh, it is.
We have to go /hello.
Oh,
Sorry.
I was wrong. Never mind. No, you're good.
Yeah, that wasn't what I meant to do though.
You have to do the chmod to like change it into a
Yeah,
executable, I believe.
don't you hate that? I've already forgotten. Okay, so just chmod. Plus X, there we go. So we're going to do chmod plus X. And don't forget, you need to get the capitals correct. There we go. And now it should show up as a green. And so when we now type in hello world, oops, sorry. We get our hello world. So that's what this did over here. And obviously totally ignored bin bash my first script. This is how we put comments into a file. Have I lost anybody? Now, if we go back to the terminal, we can take a look at all the permissions associated with that. What command will we use to do that?
I'm sorry, what did you ask?
To see all the permissions associated with a file?
Would that be dot?
Access.
Like read, write,
I'm
execute.
always wrong. I'm not gonna speak.
You're not always wrong, Amanda.
Is it 1-L/hello world?
So we can just do ls-lf.
Oh, I'm sorry, ls, not once.
Yeah.
ls-l/ don't you have to do /hello world.sh
Well,
to get the specifics on that executable? Oh, no, it shows it.
right, it's right here.
So
So it's read, write, and execute for myself, read, write, and execute for the group, which in this case I believe is root, well, it's tpickford, sorry. So the user is tpick offered, and the group is tpick offered. And the only thing when you go to other is that they can read it and execute it, but they can't write to it, so nobody can modify it. This would be a good example of where you would want somebody to be able to have an HTML file where they can read it. You don't execute HTML files, but so anyway, so we now have this, the permissions are set so people can see it. I can change it, so I could go in here and do chmod 755 or 700. And if you look up under man for chmod, you'd see which variables you can change. So if I go back here and do, sorry, chmod 700, hello world, and do list-l again, you'll now see that hello world lost all those extra permissions. Kind of cool. And I can do chmod 770 hello world sh, and you'll see that I have given, and so in that 770 or the 770 or whatever, the first number is the user permissions, second number is the group permissions, third number is everybody else's permissions. So it started off with everybody else being able to read and execute. By changing that to 770, I removed all the permissions for other. If I went 700, I removed all the permissions for the group. If I typed in chmod 000 hello world, I'd have to switch to being in the root to change it back. So I'm not going to do that, because that would remove the permissions for the user. And right now I'm logged in as a user, not as anything else. So we've got, we've got permissions for the user and the group. Let's go back here. Now, we talked last class about the path as well. And so you always want to make sure that whenever you're trying to execute, check my sugars. Should be okay. Maybe I'm tired. Whenever you're trying to execute an executable, in this case a shell command, and you just type in, so we've got the hello world. What if we change out of this directory? So now we're back in the home directory, and we type in, what do we type in to execute it? So, so why can't it run that file? So that is the correct one. Turn it into that.
Oh, it didn't.
So from here, we get it to work, correct?
So you couldn't be in the home directory in order to do it?
We could only run that in the directory that we're in, or any directories that are listed with the path. So our directory, T Bickford, is not part of the path. So if we do echo path, these are all the folders that it will automatically look for in order to find Hello World. I have two choices. I can move Hello World into one of those directories, or I could add the user T Bickford in there. Since it's not one or the other, it will only run when I'm in the directory that also holds the folder, the file. So you kind of get anything will work that's in the path directories or that is in your current directory. So as soon as we change directory to a different place, because now we're in the home directory, and we do that same command, can't find it. Now we could do this. So I don't know if you can see this online, Christopher and Amanda, but so we have this executable file. It's in my personal directory. My directory, tpick4 offered or whatever, is not listed in the path variables. So the path, capital P, capital A, capital T, capital H, are the directories that we have told it, this is where we're going to put all of the executable files. And so we either have to move Hello World into one of those directories or rewrite, copy that file and move it over into one of those directories, or add our directory to that list in the path list, or simply run it from the directory where it is. Those are your three choices.
So its permissions have nothing to do with where it's able to run as far as like what directory you're in. The permissions have nothing to do with that, correct?
No, they do, but I have permissions for
user and group because we have 770. So if that was 777, would you be then able to run it anywhere because other also has the ability? No. So this is like a separate.
Right. So
without pointing directly to where the file is, like you did.
Right. So so we got a couple of things going on here. There's the path, which, in this case, it's user local sbin, user local bin, user sbin, user bin, sbin, bin, user, and whatever else is underneath there. These are, because we usually, remember the bin, it stands for binary. So that's where we put executables. They've already been turned into executable files. So it's things like user, bin, and then each one is separated in this case by a colon. And then, the next one, user, sbin, and then a colon. I'm getting it right. Yep. And then, bin, colon, sbin. So you've got all these. Now, what we could do is we could amend this file. and add on there Pickford, so that it goes and looks there. Or I could simply move the folder into one of these. If we were making this computer available with functions that we wanted everybody to use, we would do that. But let's also go back to this. So we did this, and we have Big offered. These ones are different than this. You asked a question about permissions. So this only has to do with, can the computer find the program that you asked for? And the answer was no if we weren't in the correct directory.
Okay.
So that had nothing to do with permission. It's just we told it to look for, hey Noah, did you get that envelope I left for you? And you think about it and you say, well, I went by the dining room table, I didn't see anything there. It wasn't on the refrigerator, and it wasn't on my pile on the stairs. Those are the three places I looked. It wasn't any of those. Where did you leave it? Well, it was behind the couch. Didn't you see it? That's what's happening here.
Yeah, that makes sense.
There's a place, we put it someplace it's not going to look. Permissions is totally separate. So if we've got this hello world set to read, write, execute, read, write, execute, read, write, execute, everybody has access to it. But if we take the group off and everything else, and and try to log in and access my hello world, then it won't find it. Well, you won't have permissions to access it. So you have to have the ability to find it and permission to run it. And even if we did this, read, write, but no execute, you can see it, you can even change it, but you couldn't run it. Not sure why you do that, but
yeah, because then you could just copy the data, make a new thing, and run it anyway.
absolutely.
So all of those bin folders are where the executables are going to be. So if you're trying to run an executable, you have to be somewhere where there's a direct path to those, or it's not going to.
Or change the path.
Or change the path manually, like you did.
Or like in the case of the terminal, we were running it from in the correct directory. So you kind of the default here is, if you think about this, here's everything that's defined because there's a file. We can go find that file called path. We can edit it, but the default is when you call this, or when you call something, it's going to look in all of these, plus your active directory. So because we called that, we called a program from T. Pickford, that's where it was. It found it in the active directory. The moment we stepped out of the active directory and went to home, which was a different directory, now it looks at these, couldn't find it, looked in the home directory, couldn't find it, and so we came up with an error. What you do during your development phase is totally different than what you do when you put it out there for the world. If you were making this as an installable executable file, in your install program, you would want to install it to the bin folder, if that makes sense, or the bin directory. Sorry, I'm too much of a Microsoft person. You can just go in and edit it. Now, when you're done with one of these pages, you'll notice at the top there's a place to go next. I'm just going to do that. Now, editing the scripts you already have, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but it talks about looking at different files. I think that the goal here was for you to go in, look at them, and get an idea that you can go in and log them. It doesn't really change the long example of what you want, but under aliases is one important thing. So you can set up alias, you can set up aliases where, like right here, let's just say, we're going to say alias long list. So we always want to be able to do a long list equals, and no spaces are allowed. And then we're going to do the little open quotes, ls-l, close. So we just assigned that. Now if I type this, guess what we get? Oh, that wasn't what I wanted. Why are those not different? Strange. There we go. Oh, I know. I think the problem just had to do with the fact that there was so little in that folder.
Oh, because it returned that for whatever directory you were in.
Yes.
And then you went into
I went into the home directory.
Be right back.
A lot more in it.
so there's the home directory, and what's this directory that doesn't really have it's not home. It's not, you see what I'm saying? Like, there's just this open directory. Is that like your main?
Oh, here, where are we? So we're in.
Yeah, what would you call that? What is this? Is this the root directory?
Yeah, it should be. That's why what you're seeing is everything is owned by root.
Okay.
So let's.
I just didn't know what to refer to this as, I guess.
Yeah. So we're going to change directory home list, change directory tpic offered. So that gives us the ls gave us the tabs. LLS should, yeah, there we go. I don't know why it was, maybe I was typing something wrong. So we have defined an alias called LLS. But if we close this terminal, open the terminal back up again. Zoom in. LLS doesn't exist.
So you have to recreate it every time, aliases at least.
Unless you embed it into one of these startup files for the terminal, which you can do.
Okay.
Which isn't in the purview of what we're going to do today. So that was aliases, but you can, if you always want to do a long list instead of a short list, then you could do that, because I could also do, we did alias LLS equals LS-L, and then we could do alias that short list, equals LS, what was it, columns. And then, so, I can, because if I just do LS, I get that. So, that's the default. Short list, same thing. Long list, long list. Okay. What else we got here? We got fill copy. We can go in here and how do we save this? Now, just because we saved this, what else do we have to do?
sorry, I'm back.
Convert it to an executable then?
Um,
We've already done that, right?
right, but we
Okay.
still need to update it, so we're gonna do a chmod x hello world.sh.
Oh, so you have to do that every time you make a change to the file, just so it's up to date.
It should be. And now, oops. Oh, development, I'm trying to look at it. Oh, well,
It's not returning data.
no. Should have gotten that echo right there. But let's go back. We'll see what else we're going to do here. Okay, today's date is date. So what this does is it creates a sub-function inside of it, and everything in between those brackets, which is echo today's date is, but the echo doesn't end until the end of that last quote here. So it should do that and say today's date is, and then you actually give the date. Just as if we did echo dash n today's date is going to do that. Okay, but that was different. I'm not sure why it didn't do return. And then you can also do echo date plus start colon a comma e.
I think remove the quotes. I don't know why they have it in quotes, because
Yeah.
it just makes it ignore it.
Doesn't like that either. Well, it wasn't key to what we're trying to do, so I'm going to skip over that. And I may be missing just something simple. It goes on to try different things. So now we're starting to try to write an HTML script. Every HTML page has certain things. It's got to have it defined as HTML at the top. And if you're not familiar with the way HTML works, everything is inside brackets that start something, and then with a slash, it ends that something. So it would be, header, header, table, table, HTML, HTML. And so, and that is what's transmitted to the browser of all things, and the browser knows what to do with it. So when we look at this, you've got to have the HTML defined, which you see at the very top and very bottom of that page, of that box right here. And then you have what they call the header, which is kind of like having a header, top of your page, and then you have your body. This is a very simple program. And now you can produce a script that is going to echo all of that onto the page. Let's see if this one will work. Let's start a new one. We're going to make this one HTML test 1. And now we're going to go to the terminal. To the list, there's that HTML test, chmod plus x, HTML test 1. H list. Ooh, look, it changed colors. HTML test .sh. And there it is. So it just echoed it all out. Now the cool thing is that you can also do a what did I just do on that line?
Are you making it like an actual?
Right.
It should return a page now. Like a HTML is for the web page, so it looks like you turned what was an executable into.
And there it is.
You changed it?
Right. So what I did was, when I ran it the first time, all of the commands said echo, which means to display it or to put it out there. The second time I ran it, I instead of putting it out to the screen on the terminal, I gave it the direction to put it out to a file, HTML test1.html. And so here it is, right here. And if we did that, if we do a cat HTML test1.html just to look at it, there it is. Now if we pop around to the here, where's our files? Open up that HTML folder, if it will. There it is.
That's pretty cool. Your web page sucks though. It looks ugly.
It's a one-line simple. So we made a executable. It was very simple. We typed it in on an editor. We turned it into an executable. We executed it once just to see what it looked like on the screen. Then we exported it through the double arrow option, which exported it as a new file. We gave it an HTML ending so that we knew it was supposed to be used. So that when we click on it out in the real world, the file management system says, oh, it's an HTML file, let's open it with a browser. We could just as easily have given it a TXT ending, and it probably would have outputted and opened in the text editor.
So could you then, the same way you did it, start making all those executables, just make one into an HTML like you did with this one, make one into a CSS, and then multiple HTMLs, multiple CSSs, and move them all to the same place and essentially make like a fully functioning web page like that? Now doing it that way, I guess it would just decide on what you're comfortable on, right? Because we did it through Notepad, but
right,
or Notepad++ at least.
So now I'm gonna ask you to stretch your brains here a little bit. I want you, yes, I know it's gonna hurt, Amanda, but you gotta do it. What you're gonna do is you're gonna imagine you are the network server admin. And you are going to, every 5 minutes, through an automated executable, update the system information on the server stats so that it becomes presentable on an HTML website.
Mm-hmm.
So rather than you going in and updating it every 5 minutes, you write a script which is executed every 5 minutes, which you can write a script for. And that script takes the information off of the system, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, takes it off of the system, embeds it in a web page just like we just did. I mean, I know that's the simplest, we could have had Hello World, instead we have your page
Content
goes here. But now we're going to put a little bit of content there. Could be, number of users, how much disk space, what's the CPU use. I mean, a lot of that information is readily available by the system. And so what we want to do, though, is we don't want to log into the computer every 5 minutes. I'm busy over here doing the rest of my job. but I have a little monitor right over here that's showing me everything that's going on in an HTML website of what that server is doing. And so the whole goal here, I mean, you could write all of this in a text editor. You could use an HTML editor, which is even better. You could do all of that, and it would be cleaner than what we're doing. There are too many things open now. Uh-oh. What did I have on the other side of the text? I don't remember seeing the title of your page. Did you? Oh, well, yeah, let's have fun, right? Save. You'll notice I'm just reusing that's funny, it didn't go in there. Oh, I didn't run it, did I? There we go. All right, and now let's see if that did it. Now we go back out to File Manager. Oh. I guess we need to clear it. Notice I went in, I just added the bold characters around content. I mean, this is not the way you want to do website development.
No.
You drive yourself crazy. But it's just the beginning steps to understand how to do some of that. So I'm going to go back to here. Sorry. Now, I'm not going to spend some time, there's a couple places in here where they introduce the ability to use shorteners. And in this case, up here, where you use echo all the time for each line, they show you how to use it once. Right here. So they're going to have you, instead of echoing out, they're going to have you concatenate all of this, everything between the end of file beginning and end of file end. They use that underscore EOF underscore, but you could use anything. You could have said start here. Can't do start here and end here, but they have to be the same thing, and it's just a placeholder. This particular author uses underscore end of file underscore as what he is identifying as the beginning and the end. Very similar to the way you do header, end header, except there's no slash head, in this case. So you have changed that. Here, this minus sign that he puts, or her, she, I don't know who wrote it, after the cat arrow, means that they're going to allow you to put tabs in there for readability, but those tabs will not be included in the output. It's just, this is very standard script indenting. That way you know that this is part of head, because there's head, there's end of head, and it's all indented. There's body, end of body, and there's the body indented. If you had if-then statements, then you know which goes with the if, which goes with the then, and all of that. So that's the difference between just a double back arrow and a double back arrow and a minus sign. Now here, interestingly, you notice how there's my system information and my system information? In both places, one of the things you can do is you can, at the very beginning, do this, which is to define a variable. How many of you have had any of the programming classes?
Yeah, the HTML one.
Yep. So, how I touched that. I don't know why, but I get shocked every time I touch that thing. I try to pick this up without doing it, but I always manage to make it. My wife and I were talking about why Inuit, and people rub their noses as signs of affection, and I'm thinking, well, anybody who's lived in 10 degrees below zero knows that you never lead, a kiss without grounding first, because so just
when it's cold.
Right. If you have never met somebody who, gets shocked, static is much more frequent in the cold. In the summertime, you never have to worry about static discharges around electronics. Humidity in the air just keeps the static from developing. But in the middle of the wintertime, every doorknob, every sink faucet, whatever, and people ground themselves together as well. Plus chapped lips, just you're done for. Okay, so two things, variables, and what's the other one? Constants. Anybody know the difference between these?
Variables changing, constants are constant.
Oh my gosh, very good. Good training.
Genius.
So if you have a program that you write and there's a piece of information at the beginning that you want to be used throughout, does not have to be a constant forever. It may just be a constant for this time that you're running this program. But there's nothing that the user is going to do that's going to change it. Gravity equals 9.2 meters per second squared acceleration. That's a constant.
Stop that.
Equals 3.14, whatever level you want. Those are constants. But it could also be that the constant is interest rate. And as far as you're concerned, you're going to set the interest rate in your program that you wrote to 5.5%. And you don't want anybody to be able to change that. That's a constant. On the other hand, variables might be, number of clients. Current users. Temperature. All these things that during the course of running the program, either environmental information from your computer or the environment is going to impact what's going on inside the program, or as you use the program and you're at a bank, and over the course of 1 hour, the number of clients goes from 5,281 to 5,293. Why? Because you got people coming and going. So these are variables, and the computer doesn't really care which they are. But in Linux, one of the things you might want to do, and they recommend different naming conventions. The author that was doing this one thinks constants should be written as all caps. And that would also mean that variables would, and you can use whatever naming convention you have. Maybe this one you're going to always have be, all small, all lowercase. Variables can have all the letters and all the numbers in them, but they must start with a letter. They can have no spaces. If you need a space, what do? All lower case. I don't like that. I would rather write all lowercase without the spaces. But, and this is true for the Windows operating system and the Linux operating system. I'm not familiar with the OIS, but I'm assuming it's probably similar. So spaces cannot be used here, because as soon as you put spaces in, the computer has no way of knowing that this isn't 3 different words, commands, or whatever else. Well, gosh, I don't know what all is. And I'm not going to infer that you meant all lowercase. But if I do this, or put them together, then it's a unit rather than 3 separate units strung together. So those are constants and variables. So what they're going to do in this one is twice in that program is the my system information. So one of the things they can do is they simply said title equals my system information. And then down here, they can call it once and they can call it twice. And by putting the $sign in front of it, it's telling the computer, this is a variable, please insert that thing which was assigned to this word. And you could easily have a bunch of things up at the top. I'm not saying computer programmers are lazy. They're thrifty with words. And let's say you've got a program, and the longest program I've ever written was well in excess of 2,000 lines. If you start having things that show up regularly, like my system information, and it shows up in 20 different locations, and somebody says, Tom, it needs to read our system information. You have to go and find that in every place that it was. And if one of those 20 different places you had misspelled, you won't find it when you search for it. So if what you do is type in a variable and set that variable equal to the string that you want, and a string is a set of characters rather than a number, then you can, all you have to do is change it at the front of the program. And every place beyond that that says title will get that change in the original string. Same thing goes, because if you set a variable to the number of clients and then you call up a report that says how many clients you have, it's going to immediately go back, look and see what the current value for that variable is, and insert it into your report. Kind of cool? All right. Variables. Yeah, creating a variable is wicked easy. You simply do an equal sign. Now, let's go back to here. What I want to do is I want to look at the print environment. Oops. Oh, I guess it would help if I did. So there's a command called print environment. Oops, sorry. Print env. It's in the reading, so just forgot to do that. But these are all of the variables that are set in your computer already. I think we'll ignore that top stuff there. Let's find one that makes sense to us. So the user is tbic offered. The desktop session is a cinnamon because we're running cinnamon mint. The home directories. 256 color. Language US common or English. Login name. Cinnamon version. Session manager. So we've got all of this stuff is already predefined. See all of these capital letter sections here like this? That's a variable. Although for all intents and purposes, consider it a constant. Obviously, it's not a constant if somebody else logs in, because then the user would become something different. But for our purposes, that's what it is. So I'm going to go over here, and you see there's a host name right here. So they wanted to print out title, which is this information right here, and then a space, and then the host name, which in our case will be, there we go, host name, user. I don't know if ours has a host name. So I might just use user instead of host name. Let's copy this over to our file. Put this in here. I'm going to change this to user. Oops. Are you chatting there? Somebody? There we go. And user up here. Save this. File save. Now we got to go over here. List. So we're going to we're going to do chmod. There we go. We're going to change it. Now we're going to HTML test 1.sh and .html test 1. Actually, I'm going to make it 2. .html. Oh, sorry. Wrong part. So take that file, output it to HTML test 2.html. The reason I'm doing this is, and I'm not as familiar with this, do you remember how it truncated and kept adding it on when we were doing the first one? So I want a clean one this time. I'm going to hit return. And now we're going to go back over to our file directory. And here's our HTML test 2. Open it up. System information for tbic offered. Pretty cool?
Yeah.
And so we're interacting between all of the different bits and pieces. Oops, I keep closing it. And I think, what step are we up to? I'm going to leave it at that. The homework has you going through 7 steps. I think we're up to 5 or 6. So I'm going to leave a little bit for you to do the reading. What I want you to do when you're all done is to be able to take your final program and just upload that, or upload the HTML output that you created. I think I might have forgotten that one line. I'll have to make sure I go back and put that in there. Any questions?
So we're not creating a full web page?
No, I mean, feel free to make some additional changes to that. Your goal is to work through that exercise that we were just kind of doing, but please do the reading that goes along with it, so that you understand what it is. It's not hard, but it's new material. And feel free to add a few lines. You know, that was just an example of just showing who the user was. Go ahead and pull a few more things out of that the print environment list of functions. You know, because there's a couple of dozen of them in there, so you could easily go line by line and say current user. You could put the date in there. You could do, you know, show off a little bit. It wouldn't take much, but that's your homework. Besides getting caught up. Questions? How about you, Christopher?
He's gone.
Oh, is he? Anybody else?
Nope, got no more.
Cool. Go home. Sorry, what?
Somebody's in chat right now. Looks like asking questions.
Hold on.
You should be on module 9 by now.
Yeah, but he's only assigned up to 5 so far.
I'm kidding. Yeah. Don't take me
stop.
seriously.
All right, that was Isaiah. For some reason, I didn't know he was on there. Isaiah, you shall get credit. Oh, wait. Sorry, no cash, just credit. Isaiah.
Oh, did you get me for attendance? I don't know, I was a little late.
Yep, no, I heard you.
Don't forget me.
That would go without saying, Amanda. Let me see.
Yay.
Just trying to see. Yeah, for some reason on the Linux version, it doesn't show everybody. So that's it. I hope you have a great break. Noah's waiting to get out of the door, get his coat on, ready to be packed up.
Been here for too long.
Yep. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you in
Thanks.
over a week.
See you in a week.
Wait, isn't class over? Like, we have break, right?
Yeah, that's what they mean.
Right.
See you.
I will
Oh,
see
whatever.
you not next Tuesday, but the Tuesday after.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye. Have a great break.
You too.
All right.